Hey, what's your name?
Jennifer.
Okay, how old are you?
Cheese. Say cheese.
This is my sister Jenny. Say hello, Jenny. Say hello.
So, I've been kind of slacking with these videos because I've been very busy with school. Fortunately, in my final year, I've been doing coursework, dissertation, blah, blah, blah. But something that I am very proud of myself to have actually done this term is that I wrote and directed my own play, which was put on at my university. Um, so, yeah, that was really fun. This was about 2-3 months ago now that this happened, but that is what this video is going to be about. So the play I wrote is called Darling Dido, and it is loosely based on the life of Dido Elizabeth Bell, who was a historical figure in the 1800s, and she was a mixed-race woman who grew up within British aristocracy, which was, obviously quite a rare thing at the time. But her mother was an enslaved woman in the West Indies, and her father was a white naval officer who had an illicit, well, I won't say affair. He likely raped this enslaved woman, then had a baby with her. And unlike other people who probably would have just left the baby with the mother, he for some reason brought her back with him to Britain. And in real life, she was raised with her cousin's family. He didn't actually raise her himself. He gave her to his brother, or I can't remember, but she was raised with her cousin Elizabeth and her aunt and uncle. There's already a movie about her called Belle, if you've heard of it. But I kind of took this story and took the character of Dido in a way and kind of created a fiction around her. So in my original script, I kept it in the same time period. I kept it in the 1800s. But then I was writing this and I realized I don't know how to write in this time period. Like, I don't know how they would speak like, because in my head I was trying to make it sound kind of Bridgerton-esque, but I know that Bridgerton itself is not even like historically accurate. And it got to the point where I was like, do I even care about it sounding historically accurate? Like, they can talk however I want them to talk. But then I'm like, if I make them sound modern, but then it's meant to be set in the 1800s, does that kind of take away? So I was a bit conflicted. I went to this like writing group thing, and they suggested that because I had quite a modern tone in the way that I was writing, should possibly maybe bring it forward in time. So after that, I changed my mind and I took the story and I put it in the 1920s instead, which I'm very glad that I did, because I think the kind of World War One element of everything kind of added a nice edge to the story as well, that I think was very interesting to add in. So basically, everything that happened in the story is like fiction. None of this actually, well, to my knowledge, none of this actually happened to Dido Elizabeth Bell, but I kept the same like origin story of this being a mixed race woman named Dido whose father had an affair with an enslaved woman and then brought her back with him to England. But in my adaptation, she is actually growing up with her father and her half sister and her stepmother. So this is the general plot. It's set in 1920s England, and the First World War has finished a few years ago, and Dido is living with her sister Elizabeth, her father, and her stepmother. Now, she's experienced a lot of like racism growing up as a mixed race woman in 1920s England, and she also has a lot of conflicting feelings about love and relationships. And because of the racism she's experienced, she feels very inadequate, and therefore she sees love, marriage, children as the only way that she'll be able to be respected and experience the love that she craves, that she has not properly experienced from the world or really from her family. So the story kind of begins when, on Elizabeth's 18th birthday, her sister Elizabeth's 18th birthday, the mum introduces this man called Peter Roberts, who was a former soldier during World War One, to the family. She brings him to Elizabeth's birthday, and she kind of is propositioning him to Elizabeth, who is very uninterested in all matters to do with marriage and love. And she forces them to dance, and she's just kind of becoming an arranged marriage type thing. But it's quickly evident that Dido also seems to have a kind of crush on Peter as well. And then at dinner, we see Peter behaving inappropriately towards Dido as well. He's like touching her inappropriately under the table. And Dido is conflicted by this because although she understands that this is inappropriate behavior, like this guy, the whole family's just met and he's doing these weird, creepy things under the table to me. But at the same time, she's kind of conflicted by the feeling because she's never really felt wanted before. So she's like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I know this is wrong, but also I kind of like it. So then obviously it's later revealed that the mum has betrothed Lizzie to Peter, and Lizzie is very, very angry about this. She's not happy about this because she part of her misses the freedoms that she had during the war when all the men were away, and the kind of woman being allowed into the workforce and given an alternative purpose in society outside of the domestic. And Elizabeth's a little feminist, like Rosie the Riveter character, and she does not like the idea of her freedom being taken away even further by her mum kind of giving her to this man who she's only just met without her permission. But she also knows that she doesn't really have that much choice in the matter, so she's very angry and upset about this. And Dido, who is obviously obsessed with romance and love, doesn't really understand where Lizzie's coming from. She's like, well, if I were you, I'd be really grateful and happy if I could get to marry like this white man who represents like the epitome of like British upper society, And if I could be able to assimilate into that as well as you can, like to Dido, she feels that Lizzie's being ungrateful, whereas Lizzie is just upset that her freedom has been taken away. So there's that kind of like disconnect between the two sisters, not being really able to see where the other one is coming from. And then later we have more interactions, even after the betrothal to Dido's sister, we see more interactions between Peter and Dido, where Peter is being flirtatious and very inappropriate towards Dido, who is 16 years old, by the way. He confides in Dido about his own PTSD and like trauma from being a soldier in the war and feelings of like guilt and kind of shame in his survival when so many other people died. So there's like kind of a lot of emotional intimacy between them, but he's also very like inappropriate, and you can tell that his feelings towards her are very much of the sexual nature, and he doesn't really see her as a romantic prospect. He sees her as someone who he is physically attracted to and sees as naive and easily accessible for him to exploit. And she, in a way, it's kind of ambiguous whether she recognizes this or not, whether she actually likes him or not, or whether she just likes the attention that she's never really received before. And eventually, Peter and Dido do kiss, and there is like an ongoing motif. I forgot to mention this. There's an ongoing motif in the play of white paint or powder. So, like, in the beginning scene, there's like a flashback when Dido and Lizzie are children and they're in a ballet studio, and Dido paints her ballet slippers brown to match herself, and then she gets shouted at by the ballet teacher. So after she gets shouted at by the ballet teacher for doing that, she decides, okay, instead of painting the shoes to match me, I'm going to paint myself to match the pink shoes. So she puts like white powder all over her face to make herself like white, like all the other girls in the class and like her sister. And then the ballet teacher sees this and ridicules her and shames her. And it's like a very like, I think it kind of blatantly highlights Dido's like insecurities about her race stemming all the way from childhood and the horrible way she's been treated by the many people in her lives apart from her sister. But anyway, going back to her relationship with Peter, when Peter touches her, he leaves a white handprint on her face, which is kind of like a callback to that moment, and it's like an ongoing motif we see later on with every time she feels like she's experiencing something that's making her feel closer to the whiteness that she craves, we see it physically imprinted on her body. Yeah, so at one point they do share a kiss and Peter touches her face and it leaves a white handprint there. And then after this happens, there's an interaction between Dido and her father where this is right after Peter's left, after they've had, well, it's kind of ambiguous what happened. The scene cuts with them kissing, but it's like the white handprint's left on her face. It's like, did they just kiss? Did more happen? Blah, blah, blah. But we see Peter's gone now and it's her alone in the dining room, and her father comes in and he's like, oh, Dido, you're awake. Like, you can sleep, blah, blah. She's like, no, I can sleep. And it starts off as like a very like friendly, comforting conversation. He starts talking to her about her mother and what she was like, because Dido's obviously never met her, well, doesn't remember her mother because she hasn't seen her since she was a baby. And she's asking about her mum, like, what's she like? Does she remember me? And it starts as like a very like nice, comforting conversation between a father and daughter, and then it's slowly, quickly like pivots into very creepy, kind of predatory conversation where it becomes clear that the father's feelings towards his daughter are not completely innocent, and he keeps being like, oh, like your mother was beautiful, you just look just like her. He's like, he's stroking her hand, he's looking into her eyes in a not so very innocent way, and Dido was kind of naive to this once again, and it's only when he goes in and he touches her face and covers the same handprint that Peter left there that's kind of a nod to the audience that his feelings towards her also of a sexual nature in the same way that Peter's are. And then at that moment the mum comes in and she catches them in this moment where he's like touching her face and talking to her inappropriately, and she interrupts them and he like quickly like scurries away and he's like, oh, I touch of insomnia, like, oh, good night darling, good night Dido, and then he like rushes off to bed, and Dido is kind of still not really tapped into what's going on. And then the mother confronts her. She's like, you whore, like, you're just like your mother. Your father cheated on me with your mother, and now he's like cheating on me with you. And it's like she's blaming Dido for the husband's inappropriate behavior. It's been clear throughout the story that this mother and wife is very unhappy in her marriage. She's been forced to live with her husband's infidelity and raise the child that was a result of it. And even if Dido's blackness obviously adds another layer to why this is so like humiliating and aggravating for her. And the fact that her husband cheated on her with Dido's mother, and now he's behaving inappropriately towards Dido again. It's like, instead of seeing this as her husband is an issue, she sees this as this is like the corrupting influence of blackness. But I don't want to spoil too much about the story because you never know, one day this could be like a world-renowned play or film. So let me not spoil what happens next. But yeah, the experience of this was like so fun and also very challenging. Like finding a production team was so difficult because obviously this is Cambridge Theatre, so like all the roles are like done by other students. So you have to like find people who can do all like the tech and like background stuff, which can be quite hard. So I ended up I had a lighting designer, thank fuck, because I don't think I would have been able to teach myself how to do that. And I had a assistant director. She was so helpful, like, because when I come up with ideas, they're usually films first. I've never really done theatre before, so I didn't really know a lot about, like, I guess, I've never really directed before at all, but like, at least like with film, like that's kind of what I've researched, but not really theatre. So like she was actress, she actually auditioned for the part of Elizabeth, but then she also asked if she could be assistant director. So like she like knows about theatre better than I did, so her help was very appreciated. And then I had a welfare officer, and I had an intimacy coordinator, which was actually the most life-saving thing that I didn't even realize would be so helpful, because I knew that from a welfare aspect, having an intimacy coordinator for like, because my play had quite a lot of like intimacy scenes, so like having one would be like good for like the actors like well-being, but like I didn't realize how helpful it would be for me, because like I didn't realize how much I actually have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to like directing those kind of things, because like I think like I imagine it in my head, but I didn't actually imagine how I would get it like from my head onto stage, you know. So they were so helpful and so professional as well. Like it really gave me a lot of insight into like, I guess, the intricacies of intimacy, kind of like as a dance and like an art of its own. But yeah, so I think next time I probably have a lot more to like contribute to like how to actually really direct those kind of scenes. But apart from that, I did everything else. Like I was a director, I was the publicity designer, I was a costume designer, I was the sound designer. Like I was doing everything, jack of all trades. But honestly, I think I'm a control freak, so I kind of enjoyed having to do all that. Like even though I was very much overexerting myself, but like I think because I wrote it, like that's my baby. Like I needed to do all the roles so that I can make sure everything was perfect. Maybe if it was someone else's writing, I wouldn't have been so precious with it. But like because it was mine, I was like I need to be in charge. I need to be the one in charge of everything. I was also the set designer. I was everything. Yeah. But I really loved my cast so much. Like they're so cute. Like most of them were freshers. And they're so brainrotted. They're like my children. Like those are my babies. But it was really difficult finding a cast actually, because obviously Dido's character had to be played by either black or like a mixed race actress, because like it wouldn't make sense otherwise. But I knew there were black people. Like I know I'm in Cambridge, like you know, it's not the blackest university, but I knew there was black people in this university who were involved in theatre, so I thought I get at least some auditions, but I literally got zero. I had to actually directly go and ask a girl who I knew who was in another play, which I'd done the publicity before, like during first term, to actually like ask her directly to be the character. So, thankfully, she said yes, because I would have been screwed otherwise. Like I might have had to play her myself, and I can't act for shit. Even apart from that, I know that obviously most arts are like female dominated, but why was I struggling so hard to get any male actors at all? Like I know there's some of you, and I was getting zero. I got like 20 people who wanted to audition for Elizabeth's character, and I got 3 boys. Like the ratio was crazy, but you know, it all worked out in the end. I got my boys, because at first I was a bit scared. I was like, maybe I'm gonna have to make some of the female actors play the male characters, because gender blind casting is like quite common in theatre, but I felt like the gender aspect of the story was quite important, and it being like explicitly represented on stage was like important to the story, that I felt like gender blind casting wouldn't really work as well. So I was very glad that I didn't have to do that. But just in case, I did make all the girls like read for the male parts during the auditions, just to see like who has the best like male energy of all of them, just in case. But it didn't come to that, luckily. But yeah, I was very, very happy with my cast. So like there were such good actors. Like I can never be an actor. Like it actually seems like so, I don't know, it's such like a cool skill to have, because like some of the stuff that you have to do is just so humiliating. Like I think I would die of embarrassment. Like sometimes during rehearsals, like one person couldn't be able to come, so then I would have to read for their part, and even just reading for their part like made me want to die. Like being an actor really requires so much like confidence and like lack of humiliation and embarrassment that I'm very like impressed by. That actually really like commit to the bit, you know. But yeah, they were so good, so talented. I still do have some ideas for how to develop Darling Dido further, because I would still like to like, you know, develop on the idea, because it did really start out as a movie idea, so I would still love to make it as a screenplay and also develop it further as a stage play, because one of my goals is to go to the Edinburgh Fringe, or well, all the Camden Fringe, but one of the fringes. So that would be fun to take that there, or another play, whatever. I just want to go because I think it'd be really good exposure and a fun experience. But as a play, the way I would like to develop it further would be adding in a ballet, making it a ballet play, which is hard to explain. But if you've seen the movie Anna Karenina, which I only watched because Aaron Taylor-Johnson is in it, and that's my husband. And I actually found it a bit boring, but I found the way that it's kind of like a play movie, like it's a play within a movie. Like the way the scenes are filmed, it's kind of like as if it's taking place on a theatre stage, but it's a movie. Like it's hard to describe, but you just have to watch it to understand, and it's really cool. And I really love to do a similar thing where my play is also a ballet. Like there's a kind of underlying story of a ballet going on like in between the scenes that is kind of parallel to the actual play that's going on, because I think it's just really cool, and I love ballet so much. Like I did dance throughout secondary school, and I did ballet a bit as well, and I always wanted to be a ballerina when I was younger, but it was just too expensive, and I have flat feet, so I probably would have been rubbish at it anyway. But yeah, I love ballet. I love going to watch ballets, and I would love to write one and put it in my play. But yes, and I think it would work so well with the story, and I think it'd just be really cool to see. But it would work really well with the story, because there's an ongoing theme of dance throughout the story. Like Dido and Elizabeth, like the opening scene is with them as children doing ballet classes, and they do ballet throughout the story, and there's other dance scenes throughout the story where they dance together. And I just think dance is something I love exploring within stories, and I think it's always really fun when it's like in movies and plays where the characters dance together. So I think having an actual like proper ballet within the story would be just so fun to watch. And another big inspiration for the story was I forgot the name of it, but you know the Pierrot clown? There's like this type of either French or Italian theatre that derives from, which was a big inspiration for the kind of themes of the play, where Dido is meant to be the kind of Pierrot clown who is kind of destined to be kind of humiliated and alone and kind of sad. And Peter is meant to be the Harlequin character who is kind of like a trickster and I guess suppose like the antagonist. And Dido is trying really hard to be Columbine, who is the woman who Pierrot is in love with, who is Harlequin's love interest. And no matter how hard Pierrot tries, he's never the one who ends up with Columbine. Harlequin always steals her away from him. So Dido is trying really hard to be Columbine, to be the one who ends up with Harlequin. But in the end, it's Lizzie who is Columbine. She is the one who is stolen away by Harlequin and who leaves Pierrot, Dido, alone and sad and without love because Peter steals away Dido's sister, who is the one person who's really loved her whole life. And Columbine's character is kind of like I think she's meant to be a prostitute, but she's also quite like this kind of witty, like snide character who like makes like snide comments to the audience. And Dido similarly does that throughout the play. She makes like kind of like in a Fleabag-esque way. She like makes like passing comments to the audience when things happen. She monologues to the audience quite often. So this is her trying to escape the character of Pierrot and be Columbine, to be the love interest. But it's her blackness kind of keeps her from being able to ever fully encompass this, despite how much she tries, and she's like forced into this position of eternal loneliness as the sad clown. So this like theatrical kind of dynamic that's like the basis for like a lot of the play's story, a lot of the storyline. Adding the ballet element, I think, will like elevate the kind of theatrics of everything, because the play is kind of almost meant to be a kind of fairy tale until things fall apart, like in Act 3, where Dido is like obsessed with like fantasies and stories about love and romance, and that's kind of reflected in a lot of like the staging, the lighting, and everything. So I think adding like a concurrent like love story ballet that's going on between the actual scenes of the play would further emphasize this, and how like Dido exists within her own mind and in this kind of naive fantasies about love until she is forced to like recognize the real world that she lives in and the kind of turmoil that comes with that. But yeah, I just think that'd be really cool, and I love ballet and would love to make a ballet. And I think we definitely need more black girls in ballet, so that would just, give me an excuse to make that happen. But yeah, I do have a few other stories that I'm working on right now, which I probably shouldn't be. I should be working on my dissertation. But most of these ideas I came up with when I was like 16. I just feel like I was like very creative when I was in sixth form, like really depressed, because I was just in my head so much. So I was coming up with all these ideas, but I never actually made them reality. So now I'm very, proud of myself that I've actually made these things reality, and hopefully I'll get to make a lot more stuff in the future and get to do this professionally one day, making movies, writing plays, whatever, just, creating. But even just this stage of doing this play at university, I think my 16-year-old self will be very proud of me.